God save the Commonwealth of Massachusetts.
Welcome, welcome, welcome. This is the I Don't Belong Here show, and I am your host, Samantha Benigno. I am a behavioral scientist, a career psychotherapist, a sixth-year PhD candidate in clinical psychology, a master's level psychologist and counselor, and I am here breaking down the Justice for John O'Keefe case. So today we're going to do a short little video. What I want to do is I want to review the two sets of statements from Alan Jackson and from prosecutor Hank Brennan following last week's verdict. Now, we already had heard prior to this, in fact, just the day after the verdict, from the interview that Alan Jackson had done with Howie Carr. And I have to tell you that I appreciated that interview quite a bit. And the reason is because I've watched all the videos, or most of the videos, of Yannetti and Alessi. They've been making the rounds on YouTube, and I've watched all of those. And it's funny because they're very, very careful not to throw the judge in this case under the so-called judge in this case under the bus. Very careful, right? And I get it. I understand, particularly for Yannetti, because look, he's a local lawyer, right? Like, look, he may have to deal with her again someday. This is a Boston attorney. So I understand from Yannetti's point of view, not wanting to rock the boat, not wanting to take on a judge. Completely understand that. Alan Jackson, on the other hand, is a California attorney who probably doesn't foresee himself spending a whole lot of time in and around Judge Bev's courtroom ever again.
Everything they did strategically was to try to hide evidence, try to hide witnesses, try to hide experts from the jurors. They filed motion after motion after motion. And well, that's one thing. I mean, I can handle a prosecutor. I can beat most prosecutors with my hands tied behind my back. I know evidence very, very, very well. The problem is when the judge is on the Commonwealth side and tends to lean toward the Commonwealth, that makes life very difficult. And I've got example after example after example of the Judge Cannoni making very bizarre rulings that just did benefit the Commonwealth over the defense. And they're myriad.
And it's clear to me that to Alan Jackson, this is very personal at this point. Very personal. I think because they won, the message I got from Yannetti and Alessi is like, well, we won. So my feelings about the judge have now shifted because we won. So who cares? Which I understand and I get. Like I said, he's a local guy. I understand. But Alan Jackson, to me, at the end of his closing arguments in this case, you could feel the desperation that Alan Jackson felt wanting this case to be over. He was almost in tears. At the very end, he gets choked up. He actually bites his lower lip.
So I ask you, let your voice be heard, not in whispers, but in truth. Let the community feel, through your verdict, that justice cannot be bent and that it will not be buried. Find Karen Reed not guilty, not guilty, not guilty.
It makes me get a little teary-eyed thinking about it, right? Because he's just like, you guys have to see the truth. You have to see it, right? And he's just so desperate for this to be over. He's so desperate for Karen Reed to be acquitted. Because to me, he's such a fighter. I mean, so is Yannetti. Don't get me wrong. Yannetti's, I mean, come on. Nobody was as emotional, he was as emotional, if not more, than anyone else in the reaction. But I think Alan Jackson was so afraid and was so desperate and really didn't know which way it was going to go. And so he was just holding his breath. And that's why at the end, when the verdict comes, Yannetti is the one crying, and Jackson, I think what he was feeling was relief. So there wasn't tears. It was just exhale, because he was just like, and we had that hot mic moment before the verdict comes out, right? When the jury comes back with the question, and we hear Alan Jackson say to Robert Alessi,
Bob, I can't do this. I can't.
Bob, I just can't do this again. Like, he's so done. So to me, for Jackson, this is very personal, very, very emotional. And in this interview with Howie Carr, what we get is Alan Jackson telling us exactly how he felt. And sure enough, lo and behold, it's exactly how all of us felt. And in particular, and I loved this because it was so obvious the day that this happened, the defense's case in chief started with Matthew DeSogra. And it wasn't the sexiest start, but they had to start with him, which was the guy who analyzed Burgess and Welcher's text stream data reports. Now, it wasn't sexy, but it was important because what he was highlighting was the ways in which they had changed the report so that it would line up with Ian Whiffin's cell phone data. That was the whole point of one of the major points in what DeSogra's testimony was about. It was about other things too, but at the end, when all was said and done, he highlighted how Burgess went about using the data to create a certain result. How he did that the first time, the first report, what it produced, and then what the second report produced. And it was all about moving the timeline so that it lined up with that 12:32 stop time that Ian Whiffin came up with. Okay, fine. But DeSogra was the first witness for the defense. And that morning, I'll never ever forget this. I mean, it was just one of those like really clear moments during this trial. So it was before the morning lunch, or it was before the morning break, jury break that the judge likes to give them, right? So I was watching on probably the Law and Crime stream and watching the comments, as I would typically do during this trial. And I should just also say that last year, I often watched with attorneys, like I would watch with Melanie Little. But I think because I had done that and done it for the whole trial the first time, I didn't need to do it as much for the second time. Like I was kind of up to speed on the legal pieces and kind of knew what was going on. And I just wanted the straight trial, right? I just wanted to hear what was going on in real time. So I'm watching this chat and I start noticing that every objection is being sustained. Every objection. I notice it. And then I start noticing that there's somebody in the chat who's counting how many sustained objections there are. And then I just remember seeing the 41. And then I remember looking at the time and it being like 11 o'clock. It was like this guy had only been on the stand a couple of hours and we had already had approaching 40 objections.
Yeah, we would get people would be texting in and saying, why doesn't Jackson object to this or that? And I said, after, he's been overruled, his objection's been overruled about 1 million times in a row. I mean, he's just pissing off the jury if he keeps objecting because he knows what's going to happen, right?
So the court is a theater, right? There is a theater to courtroom advocacy. And part of it is playing to the audience. And the audience is not the public at large. The audience is not the bloggers. The audience is 12 folks, or in this case, 18 folks sitting in a jury box. I had to play the odds. There was a witness I took, Howie. This is still just shocking to me. There was a witness that I took on direct examination. It's direct. And it's an expert. And just allowed to lead experts. In every state in the union, you can have moments where you lead experts. Every question I asked was objected to by Hank Brennan, and 100% of his objections were sustained. I've never seen that in 30 years of practice. Literally, I think it was 49 objections.
That it was 100% success rate for Hank Brennan. And the point that Alan Jackson is making is, it's one thing to go up against a tough prosecutor. I can handle any prosecutor as a defense attorney. But when you have the judge in this case, operating as a conduit for the other side, trying to tip the scales of justice, who's not just calling balls and strikes, but who's actually trying to actively advocate for the other side, that's something I had never faced before. And what they were doing, according to Alan Jackson, is they were trying to keep the evidence out of the courtroom. And he's right. I mean, look, we saw with our own eyes Hank Brennan fighting to keep ARCA out. almost like that was the most important thing in the world, more important than any other aspect of this trial. It seems like Hank Brennan put all of his marbles in the keep ARCA out basket, and he couldn't find anything in the end. I mean, he tried though, right? You guys all remember the voir dire early on in the trial where he goes nuts on Dan Wolf, and was one of those times where Dan Wolf, just like, he shined like a bright star because he saw that, like, he's a good guy and there was nothing nefarious happening. So for Jackson to be so clear and to come out so strong against the judge, which I was just so grateful for, because again, that matches my experience 100%. She clearly, I mean, bias would be the nice way to say it. To me, she was actively operating an operant of the Commonwealth. I believe that Michael Morrissey handpicked her. I believe her and Morrissey go back to childhood. I believe she was selected so that she could tip the scales. And it's amazing that even with all of that, they still won. And that's the incredible thing here, right? Like how justice prevailed despite the Commonwealth's efforts and really vicious effort, to obstruct justice at every turn. And they really did. And one of the things that, we're going to see in the videos that are to come, because I'm working on like 6 different videos right now, all of it focused on evidence, focused on how the cops in this case handled evidence, focused on how the taillight got to 34 Fairview, all of that stuff, right? I'm so knee deep in all these cops' testimonies. It's crazy. And what you realize is there was so much nefarious crap happening. There was so much shadiness, right? Like, for example, the 2 ring videos that would have absolutely definitively proved that the taillight was cracked and not shattered and broken just disappeared.
Trooper Proctor, would you agree that from the very beginning of your investigation, you treated Karen Reed very differently than you treated the Alberts and the McCabe's in this case?
Objection.
I'll allow it. Was she treated differently?
Absolutely not.
You've already testified that there were several hundred ring videos from One Meadows from both the facing the driveway and the front door camera, correct?
Yes.
As the case officer, you obtained and controlled those ring videos from One Meadows from the moment that they came into Massachusetts State Police custody until they were handed over to the Commonwealth, correct?
Yes, they were archived.
You drafted the search warrant for the ring video access records, correct?
I did.
You obtained the warrant returns once those search warrants were executed, correct?
I did.
You took possession of Mr. O'Keefe's cell phone physically, correct?
Yes.
And you had access to Mr. O'Keefe's ring account in that cell phone, is that right?
Correct.
Some way or another, you could get access to the ring videos.
Correct.
And watch those ring videos on his app, on the phone.
Yes.
Which means you had full access to the app. You could keep videos, you could save for later, you could delete videos, you could do anything you wanted to within that app, correct?
Yes, those are the capabilities within that app.
Trooper Proctor, did you delete any of the ring videos ever from John O'Keefe's phone?
Absolutely not.
Did you delete a video of Miss Reed arriving to One Meadows at approximately 12:41 a.m. on January 29th, 2022?
Absolutely not.
You will agree, Trooper Proctor, that the video of Miss Reed returning home from 34 Fairview at approximately 12:41 a.m. is not there.
Correct.
As the case officer, you're aware that Trooper DeChico also reviewed some or all of those videos, correct?
Yes.
And he did that at your request.
Correct.
He took notes of his review of those videos, correct?
Yes.
And then he provided those notes to you so that you could then memorialize those notes and your notes in a broader report that you then drafted in November of 2022, correct?
If memory serves me, the report I wrote regarding the ring camera was based off my observations of the videos that I had watched.
did you actually, at any point before writing your report, did you note or did you review his notes?
I can't recall.
Trooper Proctor, do you have these notes in mind, specifically the uppermost note?
Yes.
All right. You reviewed this previously before you wrote your report, correct?
Yes.
All right. And you note that at 0041, which is a time relative to what DeChico was looking at on the ring video, he indicated taillights from driveway, parentheses, I think she arrived home, in parentheses, correct?
Correct.
0041 is what? What's that in reference to?
Just after midnight, the approximate time where Miss Reed will be returning from Fairview Road.
It's military time for 12:41 a.m., correct?
Yes.
Your report is dated June 1st, 2022, correct?
Correct.
And reflected in this report are the bullet points of the times that you found of some note in your review of all of the ring footage from One Meadows, correct?
Yes.
In your report, there is no mention of the footage showing Karen Reed arriving home at 12:41 a.m., correct?
Correct.
And that's notwithstanding the fact that in Trooper DeChico's report, in his handwritten notes, he makes note of an event at 12:41 a.m. indicating, I think she arrived home, correct?
Correct.
May have shown the taillight and would have been documented evidence of the moment she got back to the house, right? And you have to think back. At that time, Adam Lally was claiming that John was hit by the car at 12:45. So there would have been no way that he could have been hit by a car at 12:45, like Jen McCabe swore that she, the time that she saw the car there was, right? And had since walked that way back. But that would have been impossible because Karen was back at the house at 12:41. So that just disappeared. And then the other video that was missing was the video where all of the, where Carrie and Jen and Karen are like kind of huddled around the taillight to see, and I can't remember, and I don't even know if they remember, whether that was when they first got to One Meadows, or when they went back to go back into the car, right? No, it's not clear to me, but one of those two times there was video and it's gone. Nobody knows where it went. So, and Trooper Proctor's interviewed about that, and who knows? He doesn't know. He says he's actively working with the ring people to try to get it back, right, for 4 years, whatever. To me, it's very clear what happened there. What happened there was Michael Proctor had to get rid of that evidence, right? And by the way, we also know that throughout the first trial, these videos were doctored.
This video appears to be flipped. The image of it, the defense says flipped on purpose. News Center 5's David Bienick live at the courthouse in Dedham to explain more. David.
Erica, this revelation came at the end of today's testimony here, and it caught everyone off guard. Some jurors even looked at each other quizzically, and some may have wondered if they'd just been tricked. The video shows police pulling Karen Reed's SUV into the Canton Police Department garage after it was seized as evidence. The video appears to show the passenger side, including the passenger side taillight, which prosecutors say was damaged after Reed allegedly backed into John O'Keefe and killed him.
I testified that this is a accurate scene.
But under cross-examination, State Police investigator Yuri Buhenik confirmed the video is actually inverted. It shows not the passenger side, but the driver's side of the SUV. At one point, it shows the driver getting out.
Not once did you mention that this video is actually completely inverted.
I did not know.
How did you discover that the image was inverted?
I saw the word police and thought I had dyslexia.
In the video, the word police appears backwards on another vehicle parked in the garage. So does the number 4 on one of the garage's overhead doors. Defense attorney Alan Jackson believes it was no accident.
The timestamp across the bottom is not inverted, which means somebody had to put that on the inverted the manipulated, the altered video on purpose.
Here is the video again after we have uninverted it. What is in fact the passenger side taillight is out of view, and there appears to be somebody standing near it.
Who's the guy in the watch cap, in the winter cap, back there by that right rear taillight the entire time by himself? That's Proctor.
Now you're starting to see the blurs easier.
You see those two blurs?
Are moving around.
So you couldn't really make out whether there was a broken, shattered taillight or not. But the thing that they continually screwed up, the part that they're just too stupid to realize was just an oversight, was that the diffusers were broken. So there was no way that the light could have been shining any color. There was no light. The light wasn't there. There would have been no light. So rather than showing a white light, which is what the Commonwealth tried to claim, which is what Hank Brennan actually put into his case in chief.
This directly contradicts the idea that the salad board video is relevant to show any. You can see the white light shine. Stop. You can see it clearly missing. And the reason why you see white, it is a red taillight cover, and when the red is missing or gone, as it is in this case, the white bulb still shines, and that's why it shines white.
No difference with the red cover over it or not. The red cover has zero to do with the light. Makes the red light shine is this clear bubbly plastic. This is called the diffuser.
We have been listening to an accident reconstruction expert breaking down the physics in the Karen Reed murder retrial, saying the state's theory doesn't add up. Daniel Wolf testified the damage to Karen Reed's SUV couldn't have happened without way more force than the scenario the prosecution is alleging, that Karen Reed hit John O'Keefe with her car. They're also questioning, this expert's also questioning how the state reached its conclusions on what happened and the test that they conducted here. Let's bring in ABC News Live weekend anchor Phil Lipoff and criminal defense attorney Phil Harvey. Phil Harvey, I want to bring you in on, this is sort of a two-pronged testimony here. Not only is this witness saying that the state's theory of what happened doesn't add up, but also insinuating something else happened to this SUV for it to sustain this damage, which sort of goes to the defense's theory that there's corruption at play here.
That's right, Diane. And I think the testimony in particular about those internal diffusers is really central to the defense attorney's theory in advancing that sort of two-pronged approach you just described. The amount of force required to break the initial red cover of the taillight is obviously less than the amount of force required to start breaking the internal components. The state's expert just basically did what Daniel Wolf described, the defense expert described as a static test, not accounting for the force involved.
The bubbles are in there, so it disperses the light better. Watch out, all of a sudden starts lighting up. It'll just start lighting up, and if I click it into place, now that whole piece is lit up. Once that plastic diffuser is broken, it's like a fiber optic cable. Even if you put another piece up to it, it lights up a little bit, but it never lights up like a whole diffuser. See, this is what they're wanting us to believe, that with the red lens over the taillight, this is what it would look like. Bulb, lens. See, it's red. That's how a lot of taillights are. The bulb is behind it. The lens makes it red with the lens missing. The white light shining through, just like Hank Brennan says. But in real life, this is what the taillight really looks like.
That, oh, see, the taillight was completely shattered because we're seeing white light instead of red light. Well, as it turns out, that's not the way this taillight worked at all, and that was proven definitively. If those diffusers were shattered, and if that taillight was shattered, if that plastic was gone, even if it was gone completely, there wouldn't have been white light. There would have been no light at all. And the fact that there is light and that it is red tells us definitively that the diffusers were not shattered until after the Commonwealth, after the state took the vehicle into possession. So that was one of the pieces of evidence that I think the jury realized meant there was no accident, right? And I believe one of the jurors, I can't be sure at this point, I've seen so many different things, who said what, but I believe one of the jurors does point that out. So having said all that, let's just take a quick look at first Hank Brennan's statement, which came out days later, probably a week after the verdict. So this week sometime, maybe Wednesday, maybe Thursday, maybe a little before that. Let's take a look at that statement first. So let's bring up Hank's statement here. Our favorite prosecutor, one of our favorite people in the whole world. So here is Hank Brennan's statement. I am disappointed in the verdict and the fact that we could not achieve justice for John O'Keefe and his family. District Attorney Michael Morrissey appointed me, giving me full discretion to independently assess the case and follow the evidence no matter where it led. After an independent and thorough review of all the evidence, I concluded that the evidence led to one person and only one person. Neither the closed federal investigation nor my independent review led me to identify any other suspect or person responsible for the death of John O'Keefe. Wow. The campaign of intimidation and abuse that has been waged, funded, and promoted in public and on social media is the antithesis of justice. If this type of conduct becomes commonplace, it will threaten the integrity of our judicial system, affecting both victims and the criminally accused. We cannot condone witness abuse, causing participants to worry for their own safety or that of their families. It is my hope that with the verdict, the witnesses and their families will be left alone. The harassment of these innocent victims and family members is deplorable and should never happen again in a case in the Commonwealth. My heartfelt condolences to the O'Keefe family and faith that over the coming years they will find peace and closure. Okay. So let's just take a closer look at the beginning of this, okay? I'm disappointed in the verdict. Of course, you're disappointed in the verdict. You lost. And the more that I got to know Hank Brennan and assessed his behavior throughout this case, I became pretty suspicious that he may have narcissistic tendencies. He does a tremendous amount of projecting. And there was a lot of assuming that there was nefarious activity happening on the part of the defense. And it's hard to know whether that was an act, both for the O'Keefe family, both, for his boss, Michael Morrissey. But I didn't get that feeling. You got the sense that he had convinced the judge that ARCA and the defense were somehow colluding, and he believed that, right? And then, of course, during that ridiculous voir dire where the judge just let Brennan abuse ARCA, Dan Wolf, and Rentschler, although Rentschler for much less time, which actually, by the way, I should also say probably was a really good thing, because in the end that prepared ARCA for him. They must have been totally ready for this guy, where they may not have been had that voir dire not happened. So that probably absolutely worked in the defense's favor. By the time the jury was there, they were like, oh, Hank Brennan, we know what he's all about, right? So, but we know from that whole incident and the head nodding to the judge, or signaling to the judge, that he believed that he was going to catch them in something. And that's why he wanted and insisted that there be a voir dire, and the judge granted him that and then allowed him to abuse these people because she believed him. But then we see that it turns out, as he's signaling the judge, there's nothing here. Like, I was wrong, basically. So to me, these are like the little bits of evidence that over time, when you see the same pattern over and over again in someone's behavior, despite the fact that it's a public display of behavior, you start to believe that it's all very intentional and that Hank was just trying to win at all costs. And that's kind of like the sweatshirt was a good example of that, right? Presenting the holes in the sweatshirt despite knowing that they were made by the crime scene lab, the crime scene tech early on. But he was really just willing to go to any length. I mean, paying Aperture $400,000 is another example. Having Burgess, calling Burgess in the middle of the trial and having him move and change, his information, his report. And importantly, having Brian Tully be so involved in the preparation for the case. Brian Tully was seated next to every single witness for the Commonwealth as they prepared for this case. Every single one. I mean, and you talk about witness intimidation, right? These people who just keep talking about witness intimidation, and yet Brian Tully, Lieutenant Detective Brian Tully, is the guy sitting in on each and every one of these interviews. You tell me who was engaging in intimidating witnesses, right? So this calls terribly, to me, this statement is suspect right out of the gate because I know Hank Brennan has narcissistic traits and projects, right? So keep that in mind. After an independent and thorough review of all the evidence, and here, this is great, right? It's like, okay, yep, the jury has spoken, but so what? After I independently and thoroughly reviewed all of the evidence, right? After the very noble Michael Morrissey, the man with so much integrity, who's our district attorney, gave me the discretion to just follow the evidence. Yeah, right. No matter where it leads, because I'm an unbiased guy coming in on this, right? I independently reviewed all of the evidence, and then notice how he throws in there the closed federal investigation. My independent review of all the evidence points directly to Karen Reed as the only person that was ever considered a suspect and should have ever been considered a suspect in this case. Now, we all have eyes, right? You have eyes, I have eyes. Everyone seeing the trial had eyes. People all over the world had eyes. So we all know that this is bullshit. Because we all saw the waterfall videos. We all saw Brian Higgins and the bizarre, shady behavior. We all heard the flirty texts between them. We all, well, maybe not all of us, but many of us know about the unimaginable consciousness of guilt evidence that has occurred from the first trial on the part of the people in the house. The Google searches, the butt dials, where's Chloe, like the, selling the house, basically redoing the floors, all of the just shady stuff, the absolute shoddy investigations from the Canton guys and from the Massachusetts State Police. I mean, just the protecting of the Alberts, just the whole thing. We all have eyes. And yet here we have Hank Brennan saying, yep, I'm the independent authority, which is just absurd. Like there's nothing independent about Hank Brennan. Nothing. Could not be more of a conduit for Michael Morrissey. He's like the Brian Tully, but the attorney version, right? So that's absurd. But also consider the prosecutor's office role in all of this, right? Because of course, Michael Morrissey can't and won't reopen this investigation. They have to find a way now to keep this investigation closed. Otherwise, it's going to point right at the people in the house. There's no question. Because all the evidence points to the people in the house, and they know it. So they have to find a way to rationalize why this case is never going to be reopened. So this statement was not just made by Hank Brennan. This is a statement that was carefully crafted with Michael Morrissey, without a doubt. I have no doubt that this statement did not come from Hank Brennan and Hank Brennan alone. This is a statement that came because Michael Morrissey's office has to have a reason that they're not going to reopen the investigation now that Karen Reed has been acquitted. He also finds a way to throw in there that the federal investigation is closed. The closed federal investigation, neither the closed federal investigation nor my independent review led me to identify any other possible suspect or person responsible for the death of John O'Keefe. Like, is this guy serious? You're talking about being independent, and then you're mentioning the closed federal investigation, right? It's like in that one sentence, here we have these two things that can't go together, right? No, you can't be independent and then in the same breath bring up the closed federal investigation, because those two things are separate, right? They're at odds with each other, Hank. Okay, so then he moves into how we have to indict Turtle Boy, because now, remember, the Commonwealth is about to put all its chips behind making sure that Turtle Boy goes to prison. So now we're talking about the campaign of intimidation and abuse towards witnesses. And look at this, that has been funded. The campaign of intimidation and abuse that has been waged and funded. Like, who is funding this intimidation and abuse campaign that they're talking about, right? Think about those statements. And again, who do you think is responsible for this statement? Not just Hank Brennan, that I can promise. So now we are seeing that they are trying to, subtly claim that Karen Reed is funding a campaign, even though there's no evidence of that. And they tried to somehow indict Karen Reed for Turtle Boy, with Turtle Boy, so that she could get charged with something, God knows what. But guess what? A grand jury didn't agree that there was any colluding going on between Karen Reed and Turtle Boy. But, of course, the Commonwealth doesn't care about what's true. They just care about the perception. So we have Hank pretending to care about witness intimidation, which he absolutely does not, as we already know, because Brian Tully was just conveniently sitting next to every witness that they brought into court for the second trial. And maybe the first, I don't know. I never even thought to ask that question. Was he also there with Adam Lally? Maybe. And then we have this whole ridiculous statement, right? We cannot condone witness abuse, causing participants to worry for their own safety and the safety of their families. And the only part of this that I would agree with is that, you hope that the family is left alone to retire in peace from all of this nonsense. I would agree with that. I also would say my heartfelt condolences go out to the O'Keefe family as well. So there you have the absurd statement of Hank Brennan and Michael Morrissey. So now let's quickly bring up Alan Jackson's response to this absurd statement. Oh, wait. Here we go. All right. Here we go. This is Alan Jackson's response. The jury has spoken, but Special Prosecutor Hank Brennan, in an egregious breach of prosecutorial ethics, has tried to publicly shame and discredit that very jury. For him to attempt to supplant his personal views for that of the jury is a desperate attempt to save face in the wake of a unanimous rejection of the prosecution's case. Amen. And by the way, according to what I heard from Turtle Boy, who spoke to the other 6 jurors, standby jurors, all 6 would have also voted to acquit Karen Reed, according to him. The rules of professional conduct are clear. A prosecutor should support the legitimacy of the justice system and promote public confidence in its operations. Openly attacking a jury's verdict because he disagrees with it undermines that centuries-old etiquette. Mr. Brennan claims that his investigation was thorough. If that were true, the Commonwealth would have uncovered what we, the defense, uncovered. Hidden exculpatory evidence, lies, and perjury by the Commonwealth's own witnesses, cops covering for other cops, a biased and corrupt lead investigator with personal ties to witnesses, and inculpatory and suspicious conduct by myriad witnesses. The only job of an ethical prosecutor is to seek the truth in a just and fair manner. The Commonwealth fell wildly short of that responsibility. Theirs was not an effort to find justice for John O'Keefe. Rather, it was a personal vendetta against Karen Reed by DA Michael Morrissey and his hand-picked prosecutors, and it cost the people of Norfolk County millions. The fact is, Karen Reed is factually innocent, and this case never should have gone to trial in the first place. This case is a stark reminder that there has been a complete breakdown in what is supposed to be our justice system. Those in power are more interested in protecting themselves than the citizens that they are sworn to protect. The Commonwealth's deflammatory public comments ring hollow to the very constituents they are supposed to serve. It's now crystal clear that disgraced DA Michael Morrissey has no interest in actually seeking justice for John O'Keefe by identifying and prosecuting the real killer or killers. The Commonwealth would rather simply condemn the jury and its fair and lawful verdict. We are thankful for the jury's commitment to truth and that they found their way to a just verdict. But make no mistake, if DA Michael Morrissey had his way, the truth never would have come out in this case. It would have been lost somewhere in private and deleted conversations that would never have seen the light of day. Corruption like this doesn't happen in isolation. How many innocent people have been railroaded because of failures in our judicial system? We as citizens must demand more of our institutions. Okay, there you have it. I mean, I couldn't have scripted a more accurate and a more honest response to Hank Brennan's statement, which of course was dishonest and had very clear underlying motives. I mean, this wasn't about just saying, my heart is with you, the O'Keefe family, we're going to get justice for John. This was about making sure that the O'Keefe family knows that they stand by the claim that Karen Reed did this, even though, of course, there's no evidence of that. And that specifically so that they do not have to open up this case again, which is absurd. And if I am a voter in Norfolk County, or if I am somebody who wants to run for a political office, this is a great opportunity for anybody who's willing and wants to run to be the DA in Norfolk County, because if you run on this case, getting justice for John O'Keefe, guess what? You're probably going to win. Think about how many people were out there in pink. How many people do you think normally vote in that election? How many people do you think normally are voting for the DA's office in Norfolk County? I promise you, nowhere near as many if somebody decides to run on a platform where justice for John O'Keefe is the platform. So, Michael Morrissey is clearly a political figure who is plugged into the local corruption. He is clearly someone who is operating in tandem with the Boston Police Department, the commissioner of the Boston Police. This is a community that has just lived with corruption in its police department since essentially the dawn of time. And I think it's time, it is time for the voting people who are paying taxes in this community to say, we've had enough. We want new and fresh blood. We've had enough of this garbage. This is disgusting. It's a disgrace. The fact that there was a Michael Proctor, a cop who was Michael Proctor, is so despicable. And that's just one small little detail in this situation. I mean, the real disgrace is where that culture emits from. And make no mistake, it comes down from the top, folks. I also have a master's degree in management science, which is basically industrial psychology, right? The psychology of business and management, the management of businesses and organizations. And what you learn, like day one in management science, is the culture emanates down from the top. So if you want to know where the problems are in these communities, in the Massachusetts State Police, in specifically this group of cops, those that work for the DA's office and who largely were stationed in Canton and worked out of the Canton Police Department. By the way, Michael Proctor, Yuri Buchanan is careful to call the room that they were meeting in on January 29th to discuss all the evidence before the CERT team finds the evidence, the taillight. The room that they all come back to immediately following seizing the car and driving it into the Sallyport. Michael Proctor refers to that as his office. Right? I mean, think about that. You have the car, you have Karen Reed's car in the same place where Michael Proctor and Brian Higgins and Kevin Albert have offices. Karen Reed's car was brought to a place, a building, where Kevin Albert, the brother of the homeowner, Brian Higgins, the guy that most of us think is absolutely responsible for the actual death of John O'Keefe, with good reason to believe that, and Michael Proctor have offices in this building where the car was. I mean, if we're being 100% honest, I mean, to me, it was very likely Brian Tully or the people that were with Tully that found the taillight. But could it have been one of these other people? Could it have been Kevin Albert? Right? If you look at the CERT team video, the news coverage of that whole search, thank God that it exists, there are people on the scene who are covered head to toe. You can't see who they are. And Lieutenant O'Hara, who actually answers honestly in his Q&A, in his testimony with Hank Brennan, tells us, yeah, no, I didn't recognize the guys with Tully. I assume I recognized two of them, but there was a bunch of people with them running around the scene. I didn't know who they were. I assumed they were cops, but I don't know. And he says that honestly, wholeheartedly. So thank you, Lieutenant O'Hara, for being honest. And when and this will be one of my next videos that you do see, if I ever can get it done, it's just taking forever. One of my next videos, you're going to see it all. You're going to see how this whole thing lined up timeline-wise. And it's wild. You can just trace it. It's just, it's wild. So anyway, that's that. I just wanted to break down those statements with you. There's so much more to come. There is just a never-ending stream of evidence. It never stops. It's like you just scratch at something. I'm like, oh, I don't remember that testimony from the last trial. Let me what's this? Click. And then all of a sudden I open it up and it's like 10 minutes in. I'm on the floor, like shocked, like, what? How did I not know this happened? But that's because there's so much that happens that you can't possibly get to it all. It's wild. So there's so much more to come. And that's it. Thank you guys so much, so much. I can't thank you enough for your time, your effort, and your attention. And I will see you again soon.
God save the Commonwealth of Massachusetts.
I live inside my own world of make-believe. Kids screaming in the cradles, profanities. I see the world through ice covered in ink and bleach. Cross out the ones who heard my cries and watched me weep. I love everything.